Residential sales comparison and income approaches, page 26, which was blank, reread. Chapter 2, page 27, sales comparison analysis, data identification, and analysis. There are numerous types of data collected and analyzed prior to and in performance of the sales comparison analysis, or for that matter, any type of valuation method. Identification of the subject property characteristics is very similar, whether the appraiser is developing the sales comparison approach, the cost approach, or as we will discuss later in this text, the income approach. In this chapter of the course, we will discuss the appraiser's collection and examination of pertinent data regarding the relevant characteristics of the subject, and then the gathering and initial reaction to the available relevant data that can be used in the sales comparison analysis. Extra notes. Appraisers can do, and it points to comparable, competitive, theory of substitution. Page 28, data analysis of the subject property. At this point, we will focus our emphasis on data as it relates to the subject property. The extent and depth of this portion of the analysis is determined in the scope of work decision. But in most appraisal assignments, the process will entail an examination of the subject's property physical facts and an examination of the economic and legal issues relating to the property. Let's begin by discussing identification of the subject property characteristics. Identification of the subject property characteristics. Looking first to USPAP. The comment to Standards Rule 1-2E, I through V, or Roman numeral 1 through 5, tells us in part, an appraiser may use any combination of a property inspection and documents, such as a physical legal description, address, map reference, copy of a survey or map, property sketch, or photographs to identify the relevant characteristics of the subject property. In the typical everyday residential appraisal, the scope of work most likely includes a personal inspection of the subject property, be it only an exterior observation or a complete exterior and interior inspection. In addition, the appraiser should and usually does collect a variety of other documentation to adequately identify and support the appraiser's conclusions about the property characteristics of the subject. Physical characteristics are usually best noted during the property inspection, while identification of other characteristics such as the legal characteristics can be best accomplished through review and analysis of other types of data. Inspection of the subject property. The purpose of inspecting the subject property is to collect data. Just as a practical note, however, non-appraisers do not always necessarily understand this function and often think or refer to the inspection process as the appraisal. Those misunderstanding the purpose of the inspection may comment that the appraiser spent only an hour or less and earned all of that. Inspection of the, what was it? Where the hell was I at? Those misunderstanding the purpose of the inspection may comment that the appraiser spent only an hour or less and earned all of that money, when in fact, the appraiser spent hours, or in some cases days, completing the steps necessary to develop a value opinion once returning to his office. Even more dangerous are the parties who misinterpret the term inspection as being synonymous with the function and job description of a home, structural, or other inspector. Therefore, the appraiser should always make clear to all parties involved, clients and property owners, the purpose of the inspection and refer to the process as an opportunity for data collection. This will help the appraiser avoid being misunderstood and potentially misleading. While other types of data, for instance, legal characteristics, can be gathered throughout review and analysis, physical characteristics are best noted during the property inspection. Extra note, in Spanish, the word slut is puta, bastardo is bastard, asshole es estúpido, and análisis de datos is what you would say for data analysis. That's in Spanish. Análisis de datos. Page 29. For most experienced appraisers, the inspection process often begins as they approach and arrive at the subject property. Location and physical neighborhood characteristics can be observed from the vantage point. Additionally, and probably most importantly, the appraiser can form a first impression of the overall appeal of the property. This can be important, especially in market value assignments, as typical buyers are usually influenced to a certain degree by the property's street appeal, also known as curb appeal, and their first impression of the property. During the property inspection, the appraiser will gather various types of information regarding the site and improvements. Some appraisers use checklists and/or other data collection methods that are available or have been specifically devised. However, it is collected. The appraiser should be certain the information gathered is thorough and adequate for use in future analysis and reporting. Even though some of this information may not be reported in certain reporting options, which is discussed in other courses, USPAP requires the appraiser's work file to contain the necessary elements to produce at least a summary appraisal report. An appraiser's work file is the documentation necessary to support an appraiser's analysis, opinions, and conclusions. The work file also shows compliance with USPAP. Therefore, it is certainly better to over-collect information rather than under-collect it. Specifically listed on the following pages are some of the subject property characteristics that the appraiser may note during the inspection process. Of course, these may not be all-inclusive or applicable in every assignment. To make sure that all parties involved, clients and property owners, do not confuse an appraiser with a professional inspector. The appraiser should make clear the purpose of the inspection and refer to the process as an opportunity for data collection. The appraiser should be diligent in his information gathering regarding the subject because it will need to be thorough and adequate enough for use in future analysis and reporting. Comparable property possesses many of the same appeal factors, but the buyer for one property may not necessarily be interested in the comparable property. Competitive property. Those that compete head to head. A potential buyer for one property would also be interested in the competitive property. Decline. The third stage a neighborhood goes through in its life cycle, when property values begin to fall as demand falls. Deed, an instrument that conveys the grantor's interest in real property. District, the narrowest of definitions of a market area. A district is an area consisting of one particular land use, such as multifamily, residential, commercial, industrial, etc. Functional utility. When a building has the adequate design and features to be used as intended. Gentrification, the process of rapid revitalization of properties in a neighborhood which causes current residents to be displaced. Growth, the first stage a neighborhood goes through in its life cycle, when property values rise as development activity begins and continues. Market area, the broadest of all terms identifying the boundaries of a particular area. Market area takes into account the land uses and characteristics of typical market participants within the defined area. Neighborhood, any constant, contiguous area that may be identified by similar characteristics of physical boundaries. Revitalization, the final stage a neighborhood goes through in its life cycle, when property values rise again as demand increases, resulting in increased renovation, and rehabilitation. See gentrification. Stability, the second stage a neighborhood goes through in its life cycle, when the area is built up to the point where there is little, if any, vacant property, also called equilibrium. Work file, the documentation necessary to support the appraiser's analysis, opinions, and conclusions. These were the key terms for this chapter.